Hey there. So, I was scrolling on Reddit the other day, and someone had made a post of an old Ruby Dog skit video on YouTube, and it reminded me of Ruby Dog. I originally found Ruby Dog through actually the Freddie W channel. In one of their behind the scenes videos, they talk about his channel, and so I just found him through there. But I haven't watched any of their stuff in so long. So when I saw this post on Reddit, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about those. So I went back and watched a few, and there's a lot of nostalgic charm to their videos. Very old school YouTube feeling type videos. But it made me start thinking. I feel like people very frequently, although I guess maybe not everyone, but I feel like you do see somewhat frequently the sentiment that old school YouTube is better or was better. Hit a lamp. Sorry. Old school YouTube was better than new school YouTube. And it just made me start thinking about that as a concept, and I thought it would make an interesting ramble. So here we are. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is, was old school YouTube actually better than what we have now, And I do also kind of want to talk about what I consider to be the big differences, and maybe what may have caused those differences in the landscape of YouTube as a platform. I suppose the things I'm going to talk about also extend to other social media platforms, but it's all through the lens primarily of YouTube. And honestly, YouTube is a very different type of social media platform than most others, so I don't really know how much these things will apply to them all, but still, I just wanted to talk about it. So I guess first of all, let's determine, and I say determine, but really I don't think there is a way to determine for sure. But was old school YouTube actually better, quote unquote, than new school YouTube? And honestly, I'm really not convinced. There is certainly an element of charm to some of the older videos, but I think a lot of that is probably nostalgia, especially if those are videos that you watched when you were younger and then you come back to them now that you're older. So, if you watch old videos that you never saw back when they first released, back in the mid to late 2000s, and you still think those are good, then I guess maybe there's an argument to be made that maybe they're better. But yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that the videos that were being uploaded at the time were significantly superior to the videos that are being uploaded today. I think the main problem is that there's just so much uploaded to YouTube these days, right? So people today that use YouTube as a platform, and certainly there's going to be more people using YouTube today than there were back then also. So more people are exposed to this sort of thing. But, there's just so much being uploaded. I forget the metrics, but it's thousands of hours of video being uploaded to YouTube every minute or something like that. I don't know. It's insane. So the people today, when you look at the landscape of current day YouTube, it's going to look pretty bad because a majority of that stuff is going to be really bad or just pointless or whatever, I'm talking about just complete, not, people aren't even trying out here. They're just uploading random videos they had on their phone, or just literal garbage content. Not this person is trying to be funny and they're just not succeeding, that's kind of different. And I guess when people talk about, new school YouTube being bad, potentially that's more what they're talking about, where it's if you compare the sketch comedy of today versus the skits and sketch comedies that were being made on YouTube back in 2009, right? It seems like people think that stuff from back then was funnier than it is now, or I don't know. But yeah, I feel like it's maybe a little bit kind of like the same thing as when people talk about music from previous generations. So like when people talk about music from the 80s, for instance, they're like, oh, all that music was good. But like nowadays, only like some music is good, but there's like a lot of trash that gets made these days, you know? The problem is that when you think back to the music from the 80s, you're only really going to be thinking of the massive hits, right? Because it's not the 80s anymore. You're not going to remember every single song that came out from that time. And I mean, if you're someone like me who literally wasn't alive during that time, then yeah, obviously I have no way of knowing every single song that came out at that time. So there's a skew when looking at stuff from the past to remember really only the more influential parts, which end up being either really good or I guess potentially really bad. But when it comes to stuff like pop culture, I feel like there's more of a tendency for you to remember the really good stuff. So I think there's something to be said about that. If you were to like go back in time, I'm sure there was plenty of garbage uploaded to YouTube at that point in time that people just don't remember, because why would you? Why would you remember like a bunch of like 3-minute videos that were just nonsense, you know? It's just like, so the whole idea that like YouTube is bombarded with garbage these days in a way that it never was, it's just like, I'm not convinced that that's true. That being said, let's assume for the remainder of this video that there is just something incredibly special about old school YouTube. It was just superior in every way. Like I said, I'm not really convinced that that's the case. And I just want to go out and say right here, shortly, brief intermission, that I think, well, I don't really think, I think it's just an accepted fact that at this point, the bar of content on YouTube, like what is possible, I guess, in a way, like the absolute top of the top in terms of content on YouTube is far higher today than it ever was before. And that just comes down to the availability of uploading stuff to YouTube, but also the tools to create stuff. I mean, if you have a creative vision and the discipline and motivation to actually see it through and create something, you have all of the tools you need for free. I mean, you've got DaVinci Resolve, which is arguably the best video editor, and it's literally free. Obviously, with the free version, you don't get all of the capabilities, but you get way more than enough to make really compelling videos. And then like Blender's free, so if you have like this grand scope of like literally anything you could think of, you can use Blender for, you know, VFX or just doing full CGI animations, that sort of thing. Blender can also be used for like pretty much everything also. So like 2D animation, graphics and stuff like that. So like the tools that people have today are so far beyond what people would have had back in the mid to late 2000s that I think like the absolute top of the top in terms of content on YouTube is higher than it's ever been. Now, that's not to say that all content on YouTube is of that caliber. I would say, obviously, no, that's not true. But the like ceiling of quality has continued to rise and probably will continue to rise as more and more technology becomes cheaper and stuff like that, you know. But anyway, back to what I was saying. We're going to assume for a moment that the videos that were made back in the past, you know, Ruby Dogs types of videos where it's just people doing skits and, you know, more of like sketch comedy, honestly. When I think of skits, I do think of more of the modern, like Instagram reel type of like Vine comedy, which was, I mean, a lot of people look back at Vine really nostalgically. I'm going to be honest, if you go back and watch like those Vine compilations, It's literally the exact same shit that's being made today. And yet people call the shit that's made today for like Instagram Reels and that sort of stuff, they call that cringe, right? No, but Vine was special because it was so new. It's like, no, it was all the same shit. Honestly, Vines were really not that funny, if I'm being completely honest. Like, at the time, I loved them. You know, when I was in like high school, I was like a sophomore in high school when Vine was a thing. And I loved watching them, but I've gone back and it's like, it's just not the same. I've grown up. My humor is not the same as it was when I was 13 years old. But anyway, what could make the difference on YouTube? What has changed that made old YouTube so good and new YouTube so bad, according to these people? I feel like the things that get thrown around a lot are monetization, first of all. There's so many people on YouTube that are just trying to make a buck, right? They're just trying to make money. So, you know, just putting stuff together as cheaply as possible and just throwing, like, regurgitating content onto the platform. There is something to be said about the fact that, like, hustle culture, I guess, has become more prevalent in, like, society. So it's kind of fair, but honestly, I really don't see it as a true, honest assessment of the situation, because monetization has always been a thing. There's always been a monetary incentive on YouTube to make content like that. I think when YouTube first, like the very first, I think it launched in like 2005, right? So maybe for like the first year or two, maybe it didn't have monetization, but I'm pretty sure monetization has existed on YouTube for a very long time. Very early on, it was added. So the whole idea that like these old school YouTube videos are like made completely free of like any kind of monetary incentive is just unrealistic, I would say. Maybe the argument could be made that like back then it was harder to get monetized, or just more of a hassle, or like it was understood less, so people did it less, or, you know, there's arguments to be made, and maybe some of them are slightly valid, but I really don't see it as a true, honest assessment of the difference between old school and new school YouTube. Not enough to explain why there is such a difference in the type of content that's made, right? The other reason that I feel like gets tossed around a lot is like the prospect of being like a YouTube celebrity, you know, internet famous, that sort of thing. I feel like is considered more highly sought after today than it was back then. So people are more inclined to make content just for the sake of like being noticed, I guess, or having that chance of becoming like YouTube famous, so to speak. But again, I just don't, in order for that to explain the difference, it would be something that has to exist now that didn't exist back then. And I really just don't think that didn't exist back then. I mean, the whole point of sharing stuff on the internet has always been this idea of like being noticed. And I mean, that's just kind of the point of making art in general, is the idea of being noticed for the art you've made and, you know, sharing that with other people. Again, maybe back then there was less of a like strict desire to become famous in that way, and it was more just like a tenuous interest in like being noticed for like a period of time, like just briefly, like, hey, this video got 100,000 views and that's good enough for me. Whereas nowadays people are like, I want people to know my name. Like, I want people to know who I am and like follow me in my life and that sort of thing. Maybe there's an argument to be made there. Again, maybe it contributes a very small amount, but I still don't think that it's the big reason why there's a difference in the type of content and the quality of content that was made. I was thinking about it and I think I figured it out. Now, I mean, I'm not trying to act like I'm super smart or anything, or this was super hard to like think of, but it was just, like I said, something I was briefly interested in thinking about. So this is the conclusion I've come to. I think the biggest reason why we see a big difference in the types of content that were made back then versus the types of content that are made now is the accessibility of creating and uploading videos in general. I mean, people talk about how much technological advancement there was between like 1900 and 2000, like that century of time. We went from like not having cars to putting people on the moon within like 60 years, maybe even less time than that if you really like narrow it down. And I feel like people use that as a way to express that like stuff hasn't really changed in our day-to-day life, like within our lifespan. And sure, we haven't maybe seen quite as huge of a technological leap as going from horse-drawn carriages to sending people to the moon. But I feel like people discredit how much things have advanced in our society. Back when YouTube was like in its infancy, in the mid to late 2000s, smartphones didn't exist. They like straight up didn't exist. And when they started to exist, they were not like capable of producing high quality videos and stuff like that. If you wanted to make videos back in that time, you had to own like a dedicated camera, which is something that even people today probably don't have on a regular basis. But the fact that we all have smartphones that have really high quality cameras built into them just makes making videos in general super easy. Literally everyone can do it. And everyone has, videos already on their phone that they can upload at any time. Not to mention your phone is connected to the internet. That's another thing. Like internet access and like social media access, I guess, has become so much more prevalent now. I mean, arguably in the mid to late 2000s, it was already becoming much more common. I would say that was around the time where like it was pretty common probably for most families to have like the family computer, right? But I mean, it's certainly feasible to think that like there were plenty of people in that time period that wouldn't necessarily have had a home computer. And maybe if they did, if they were a kid or something, maybe they weren't allowed to use it. It was just something for the parents or whatever, all of that to say that if you look at it from that perspective, let's go back to 2008 or whatever, if you're just a kid or a young person or even an adult, it doesn't really matter, and you want to make videos, think of like the process of like what that would entail. So first of all, you need to get a camera. So either if you're a kid, you have to buy your own camera, which cameras back then were expensive. Like a digital camera, like a camcorder or something, even a cheap one, was probably going to be like a few $100s, which to a little kid, like a 13-year-old or maybe even slightly older, would have been a lot to ask for. I mean, even if you had the money, the idea of like, I have to invest this amount to even get started would be pretty insane, versus nowadays where if you just have a phone, which most people do, even like little kids these days have phones, there is no investment. It's literally just pull the phone out of your pocket and start recording. That's all you have to do. The barrier of entry back then was so much higher than it is today. But so let's continue on. So you're just really motivated. You really want to make content. So you say, okay, whatever. I'm gonna buy this camera. So you buy the camera, but now you have this in you to like, it has to be good, right? You have to produce something worth having gone out of your way and spending all of this money to get the camera in the first place, right? I feel like the investment that people would have had to have made back then in order to even be in a position that they could produce content was motivating to produce higher quality content, if that makes sense. Because why would you spend a bunch of money and go way out of your way to make videos if you were just going to make trash content, There's also something to be said about the fact that any person that got to that point would, arguably be someone who was highly motivated, right? Because any person that was only like tenuously interested in the idea of uploading videos to YouTube would have gone, okay, I need a camera. Let's go look at the cameras at Best Buy or whatever, you know. They go to the camera aisle and the cheapest option is like $150 and they say, all right, it's not worth it, right? Any person that only like kind of has an idea of what they want to do or is only kind of interested in the idea of making videos at all would go, that's not worth it. And then they would just drop the idea, right? So any person that gets past that initial step is someone that's probably highly motivated, probably has ideas of what they want to do in the first place, right? You know, they're inspired individuals that have a vision, you know. I feel like that's probably got to be the biggest change that's happened between then and now. Because like I said, any reason that you use to explain why things have changed has to be a case of it was this way then and it's a different way now, right? So the whole like monetary incentive, monetization has ruined YouTube because now people just do it for money. It's like, well, that was always there, so that's not a good example. Or the fame example where it's like, well, people just do it to get famous now, but it's like, well, that was always kind of an incentive, so that's also not really fair. But yeah, the accessibility, I think that's what it is. The accessibility of making and uploading videos was so limited that it meant that any person back then that made it past those hurdles to even be in a position to upload videos automatically put them in a position of being someone who was more likely to produce higher quality content. I think there's something also to be said. There's super loud cicadas outside. I'm sure you can hear those. Sorry about that. It's that time of year, I guess. Cicada time. I think there's something else to be said about the fact that if you were someone who had already invested quite a bit of money and potentially time to make videos at that point in time, you know, mid to late 2000s. So let's say you did go out and buy a $200 camera or whatever, you know. If you've already invested that amount of money, then it would make sense to me that you'd be willing to invest a little bit more to make the video better with like props and practical effects and stuff like that, you know. Things that you don't typically see from people nowadays, where I feel like skits and sketch comedy that is uploaded to social media platforms today is more about like the regularity, right? It's more about the routine, the schedule, you know, uploading one every day or uploading two every day, which intrinsically means that each one is going to be less special, but also means that, you know, if you were spending, you know, $50 to $100 per video to do that once a day, it's going to be it adds up, right? Versus back then where it wasn't about like any kind of schedule or regularity. It was just about, you know, again, you had a vision and you just wanted to share your ideas. So I've already spent $200 on this camera, so what's another $50 to buy some props or whatever, you know, just stuff like that. I feel like that potentially could have had an impact on just the types of things that were uploaded. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I feel like that's the best explanation I can come up with as to what could have possibly changed between then and now. It also makes me wonder, because I was thinking, like, is it at all possible to like ever get back to that? And again, I do want to point out that I really don't think things have changed all that much. I think people play it up to be a lot more than it is. Sure, there's trashy content creators that, you know, create content that's either like just straight up garbage or kind of like predatory on like children and stuff like that. Like, you know, the whole Elsa Gate shit was really weird. Stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can point to that and say that that's bad, but is that really, you know, are a majority of people making that sort of stuff? I really don't think so. I think most people that make videos on YouTube, well, this is probably not true, but I was going to say I feel like most people that make videos on YouTube do so with like good intentions. The reason I say that that's probably not true is just, again, because there are so many people that upload videos to YouTube. I would say the overwhelming majority of people that upload videos to YouTube are probably doing so just completely absent-mindedly. There's like no motivation, but also no sinister, motivations or stuff like that, where it's like they're not doing something just to get money or just to get fame. They're just literally doing it for no reason whatsoever. I'd say that probably makes up a majority of the stuff that gets uploaded to YouTube. But anyway, how could it be possible to like ignite that early day spark of YouTube? And I was thinking, what if someone made like a social media platform, video sharing platform, but in order to upload videos to it, you had to pay, let's say like $10 per video, or maybe it would be like paid depending on the length of the video. But let's just say it's $10 per video. So anyone can watch videos on this platform for free. It's just like YouTube in that manner. Maybe it runs ads or something, I don't know. But in order to upload to this website, you have to pay $10 every time you upload a video. It's not a perfect solution because honestly, I feel like that would just lend itself to getting bombarded by a bunch of like rich kids, And it does kind of detract from the whole idea of like anyone can make videos on YouTube, which is a really cool aspect of it. So it's far from like a perfect solution, but I'm just curious to think about like what effect that would have, I mean, it would certainly detract from people that upload like every day, right? Which isn't intrinsically a bad thing, right? I'm not saying that every person that uploads daily is like a garbage human being, but I'd argue that if you upload every day, chances are the content is probably not, your absolute highest quality that you can possibly make, right? The point I'm trying to make is that if there was a platform like that, I would imagine that the content would skew towards being higher quality, because why would you spend money to upload on a platform if the content you were making was garbage, if it wasn't something that you like truly cared about or believed in, you would probably not bother to spend money to upload it. But at the same time, I think there are other complications. So, I mean, if we're looking at things completely realistically, the simple fact that this platform would obviously be uploaded to significantly less, because obviously fewer people are going to be interested in paying money to upload videos to it, would mean that any video that is uploaded to it would garner more attention because it would be competing with fewer videos alongside it, right? That simple fact would potentially incentivize people to upload to it simply for the decrease in competition, right? If my video has to compete with fewer other videos, then it's going to be seen by more people, assuming that the platform has the same number of like active users, which, I mean, I guess for the sake of the thought experiment, we can assume that it will, but obviously there would be no guarantee in real life that that would be the case. YouTube has tons of users, probably more than like pretty much any other video sharing platform. So pretty unreasonable to assume that it would, but again, just for the sake of the thought experiment, let's assume that it does. The problem is that the more people that think that way and the more people that upload to take advantage of it, the smaller that benefit becomes. It's kind of a, feedback loop kind of, where it's like, because fewer people are willing to upload, it makes each upload more significant. So more people are willing to upload and pay that price because it gets them more attention. But then by merit of more people uploading, the benefit is decreased. It would be kind of a weird cycle. I don't know. Like I said, I think that it's far from being a perfect solution, and I don't think it would be really a very good idea at all. But it was the only way I could think of like kind of reestablishing that idea of there being more of a commitment, more of an investment required up front to kind of try to weed out people that are not really interested or passionate about, uploading high quality stuff. And, getting back to that time when it was more about like doing the best you could, right? I say that as a person that makes garbage content. I mean, I get it. I'm sure, and I know I get like a few hundred viewers with each video, and I'm sure there are plenty of you out there that think that my stuff is good and you enjoy watching it, and I'm grateful for that. But let's be honest, the stuff I make is far from being high quality, and it's far from being like hard to make. It's literally the easiest shit in the world to just stand in front of a camera and talk about nothing for minutes on end. So, obviously I'm contributing to the whole idea that like the content that's uploaded to YouTube these days is of a lower quality than what may have been uploaded in that time. Although I guess back then you would have also had like vloggers and stuff, which would have been more similar to the stuff that I make today. So I don't know. But like I said, I just was reminded of those videos, and there is admittedly some sort of charm to them that I feel like is missing from YouTube these days. But again, it's hard to say definitively like, oh, the spark and the joy of YouTube is completely gone. It's like, I'm just not really convinced. I think the real problem is that there's just so many more people uploading to YouTube than ever before that it's just hard to find those gems. I'm sure they still exist. There are certainly going to be tons and tons of people out there that are truly passionate about making funny videos and that sort of thing. Whether it's skits or sketches or maybe even more like serious, like cinematically focused content. But the problem is just that it's so hard to find because you have to wade through so much like filler, So that's my main reservation when it comes to saying that like new YouTube is completely garbage. It's like, I don't really think it is. And like I said before, I think the bar of content, the quality, the absolute peak of content that's uploaded to YouTube today far exceeds what would have been done back then. But yeah, it's just that as the platform has become more popular and the accessibility of making and uploading videos has become significantly easier for the average individual, we've seen an influx of just uninspired filler, right? And that just makes it harder to find those hidden gems, which does detract from the platform as a whole, I suppose. That's somewhat undeniable. But I'm not going to like disparage every person on this platform by insisting that there isn't a single person on here that's actually trying to make good stuff. It's like, that's an obvious lie. There are tons and tons of people out there that are truly motivated, inspired, and, passionate people. And it's just a little unfortunate that, their stuff probably will go unseen for a majority of people. It would be really cool if YouTube had kind of like a feature like Reddit, where, Reddit has different subreddits. But the thing about Reddit that I really like is that you can filter the posts of a certain subreddit by time, right? And technically YouTube does have like, you can search and then you can filter it by upload date. So like it'll show you the newest stuff first, but it's nowhere near the same as Reddit, where it's like you can go to a specific subreddit to find a specific type of thing and then filter it by new. So for instance, I use Reddit primarily for the Blender subreddit because I like to look at the stuff that other people make, and I like to share the stuff that I make. And the stuff that I've uploaded before on Reddit has like the potential to get attention, and that feels really good, especially when you work really hard to create some artistic piece. It's always validating to get that attention and to get people saying like, wow, this looks really cool. And that's just something that, I mean, I have never uploaded anything to YouTube that I'm particularly like proud of per se. You know, I've never worked super hard on like a video and then uploaded it and like had it not do well, right? But I mean, it's completely feasible to assume that there are plenty of people out there that do. You know, they try very hard to upload like a really high quality video or whatever, you know, some narrative piece, some piece of storytelling, some piece of cinema. And it just gets no traction because the algorithm of how YouTube shows people videos is just very specific, you know, and there's not a lot of user control. That's what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like when you upload something to Reddit on a subreddit, anyone that's filtering by new will see your stuff as long as no one else posts, you know, something like right after you. But even on like fairly popular subreddits with like, I mean, the Blender subreddit has like over 1 million like followers or whatever. And it gets posts to it fairly frequently. I would say it's probably like in the realm of like, I don't know, I'll say like 5 posts an hour or something, maybe slightly less than that, but yeah, we'll say that. So like, I mean, when you post, it will get dropped as more and more people post. But the fact that like, you know, it's always there for anyone that's coming across and they sort by new. I don't know. There's just something about Reddit that I think lends itself to allowing people to find stuff easier, I guess. I don't know. The whole like search algorithm on YouTube is pretty bad. And I would say the whole like finding stuff that you're not familiar with is pretty hard on YouTube. YouTube will occasionally recommend you a video on your home feed of some person you've never seen, but it usually doesn't stray too far from the types of content that you typically watch. So it's like pretty uncommon for you to just be shown something that you're completely unfamiliar with. And technically, yes, YouTube does have the trending tab, but that doesn't really work the same way because that's only going to show you videos that are already popular versus what I'm trying to achieve, which is, you know, getting more exposure to people who don't have a lot of views, who don't have, you know, a massive subscriber base, and already have that exposure. Those are the people that I think YouTube should try to shine a light on. And obviously, like I said, there's going to be tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of videos made by people that don't get any views, but their content is garbage and there's no inspiration or motivation behind it, no passion, you know. So I don't know. It's a tough situation because it's like, if you consider like the possibility of some kind of like curated feed where like similar to the trending tab, YouTube has like a up and coming tab or something like that. I don't know, where they like showcase really high quality videos made by channels and people that get very few views and have very few subscribers, right? But in order to do something like that, you would have to have someone like verify and choose videos over one another. Like, I don't think there'd be any like automated way to do that, where it's like, oh, this video is clearly high quality. It's like, well, what would be the metric, you know? How would you get a robot to decide what is a quality video versus a non-quality video? So you would have to have like a person watch all of these videos that are uploaded to YouTube every hour, which it's literally impossible, at least for one person to do it. But if you wanted to achieve something like that, you'd have to have a staff of like probably like 10,000 people just committed to watching every single video that's uploaded to YouTube, all just in order to facilitate this tab of videos that's meant to highlight high quality videos from people that are less known, which is obviously not worth it at all to YouTube, which is why they don't do it. But it's just unfortunate that there's no like better method. But yeah, I think it would be cool if YouTube had more of like a subreddit-esque feature that, you know, allowed you to post videos to like a specific community and then would give your videos a greater chance of being noticed by people that are more likely to care about it. Because that's a big thing about Reddit too, is like when you go to a subreddit that's, in my case, for Blender, I know that everyone there cares about Blender. So when I post stuff that I've made in Blender, I know that the people that are going to see it are going to care more about it than anyone else on Reddit will. It's just kind of a like perfect situation, versus YouTube, where you just upload it to YouTube and anyone can find it. YouTube can recommend that video to literally anyone, but there's no guarantee that that person that they recommend it to is going to care at all about the video that you've uploaded. Obviously, I'd assume that the algorithm tries to recommend your videos to people that are likely to view it, but obviously it's not going to know 100% of the time. And again, it just takes that control away from the person themselves and relies upon YouTube's assumed characteristics of who you are as a YouTube viewer, rather than you having control and saying, hey, I want to watch whatever. And then you can go to like this tab and it's just like all the videos that have been uploaded of like that type of thing, right? I don't know. I think that'd be interesting, but I doubt that would be happening anytime soon, or at all. But anyway, just me rambling about YouTube in general. Like I said, none of that really applies to me. None of the content I make is considerably high quality. Again, if you like it, I'm very happy that you like it. I'm flattered, but I'm not gonna pretend like the stuff I make is challenging or impressive or anything like that, because it certainly isn't. So it doesn't apply to me. But again, there's plenty of people out there that will unfortunately try really hard and make really good stuff and then just get nowhere with it because it just didn't work out. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later.